Throughout history, the Phoenicians have been renowned for their skill in navigation, trading, and exploration. They were the masters of the Mediterranean, with their ships crisscrossing the seas, reaching far and wide. But what if I told you that these ancient seafarers may have gone even further than we've ever imagined? Could they have sailed across the Atlantic and reached the Americas centuries before Columbus? Hi, my name is Patrick Khouri, and in today's video, we'll dive deep into the mystery of whether the Phoenicians made it to the New World. Stick around as we uncover controversial theories and evidence that might just rewrite history as we know it. Before we get into the heart of the controversy, let's first understand who the Phoenicians were. These ancient seafarers, originating from the Eastern Mediterranean, modern-day Lebanon, Syria, and parts of Israel, Malta, thrived from around 1500 BCE to 300 BCE. They were known primarily for their maritime prowess, establishing extensive trade networks and founding colonies across the Mediterranean. Their greatest achievement? The invention of the alphabet, which laid the foundation for modern writing systems. But their skill in navigation wasn't just about trade, it was about exploration. Phoenician ships were built for long journeys, and they were known to sail without the guidance of modern technology, relying instead on the stars and the winds. So when we look at their capabilities, it's not out of the realm of possibility that they could have ventured beyond the Mediterranean. But did they go as far as the Americas? Let's take a closer look at the evidence. Now let's dive deeper into the evidence that might suggest the Phoenicians sailed across the Atlantic. While the mainstream academic consensus tends to be kind of skeptical, several pieces of evidence have raised eyebrows among those who believe the Phoenicians could have reached the Americas. One of the most intriguing pieces of evidence comes from the Bat Creek stone, a small inscribed stone discovered in 1889 in Tennessee, near the site of an ancient burial mound. The stone was found during an archaeological dig by the Smithsonian, and it bears an inscription that some researchers argue is written in an ancient Phoenician script. The inscription features symbols that resemble Phoenician letters, and while mainstream archaeologists initially dismissed the stone as a modern forgery or a case of mistaken identity, it's hard to ignore the fact that these characters closely match the writing system used by the Phoenicians over 2,000 years ago. In fact, some believe that the stone could indicate that the Phoenicians made contact with Native American civilizations long before Europeans arrived. What's particularly strange is that the stone was found in an area far from any known Phoenician settlements, raising the possibility that this artifact was brought to the Americas by Phoenician explorers. Of course, skeptics argue that these inscriptions could be an anomaly, perhaps a case of misinterpretation, or the result of later settlers copying ancient symbols. Still, the mystery lingers. But the Bat Creek stone isn't the only artifact that has fueled this theory. Other inscriptions and tablets have surfaced in different parts of the United States and even South America. For instance, the Georgia tablet, discovered in the 1920s, bears symbols that some claim are linked to Phoenician writing. The stone's age and context remain disputed, but it was found in a mound burial site in Georgia, which adds to the intrigue. Similarly, there's the Oregon tablets, which were uncovered by a group of explorers in the early 20th century. These tablets contain carvings that some argue bear a striking resemblance to Phoenician symbols, specifically characters linked to their trade practices. The Oregon tablets were found in the Pacific Northwest, an area far removed from any known Phoenician influence. Yet the markings are undeniably puzzling. But here's the rub. While these discoveries are fascinating, they are not universally accepted by the academic community. The authenticity of these artifacts is a point of heated debate. Many scholars believe they are either the result of forgeries or misidentifications, while others insist that they could be pieces of a much larger puzzle, proof of ancient transatlantic contact. The reality is, these artifacts alone don't definitively prove Phoenician voyages to the Americas, but they certainly leave us asking questions. Beyond inscriptions, there's another layer of evidence to consider: the Phoenicians' remarkable navigational abilities. The Phoenicians were known for their mastery of the seas, And it's possible that they had the necessary knowledge to navigate the vast Atlantic Ocean. In fact, it was the Phoenicians who were the first known civilization to have successfully sailed around the entire coast of Africa, as described by the ancient Greek historian Herodotus. Herodotus recorded that in the 5th century BCE, a group of Phoenician sailors under the orders of the Egyptian pharaoh Necho II sailed around Africa. This was a monumental feat, one that would require exceptional knowledge of winds, currents, and navigation techniques. If they could navigate the unpredictable waters of the African coast, what's to say they couldn't have pushed further westward into the unknown? Additionally, Phoenician ships were designed to withstand long voyages across open water. They were light, fast, and agile, built for navigating through narrow straits and along coastlines. The possibility that they had the skills and equipment to venture across the Atlantic is not as far-fetched as it might seem at first glance. And then there's the account of the ancient Greek historian Herodotus, who may have unwittingly documented evidence of Phoenician exploration beyond the Mediterranean. In his histories, Herodotus writes about the famous voyage of the Phoenicians around the African continent. But he also makes a curious statement that many have overlooked. According to Herodotus, the Phoenicians once sailed beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the modern-day Strait of Gibraltar, and it is suggested that they may have ventured further into the western seas. While Herodotus never specifically mentioned the Americas, his account hints at Phoenician boldness in exploration. Given that Herodotus lived in the 5th century BCE, it's possible that there are gaps in the records of ancient travel, and Phoenician ships may have ventured far beyond the Mediterranean, crossing the vast expanse of the Atlantic. Could this be a coded reference to expeditions into uncharted waters, including the Americas? Finally, let's consider the possibility that the Phoenicians didn't necessarily come to the Americas for exploration or conquest, but rather for trade. The Phoenicians were skilled merchants and traders, and their vast network stretched from the Mediterranean to parts of Africa and even as far as the British Isles for tin and precious metals. What if their trade routes extended further westward into the Americas, possibly through intermediary civilizations? It's worth noting that ancient American cultures, like the Olmecs, had advanced metallurgy, including the use of metals like gold and copper, which were prized by the Phoenicians. If there was any sort of trade exchange, this could explain why Phoenician artifacts have been found in the Americas, whether they were items traded by Phoenician explorers or passed along through Native American intermediaries. While this theory remains speculative, it's clear that Phoenician seafaring capabilities and their widespread trade networks provide a tantalizing possibility that they may have made it to the Americas, or at the very least influenced the cultures there. However, while the theories are intriguing, they are not without their critics. Mainstream historians largely dismiss the idea that the Phoenicians reached the Americas. After all, the Atlantic Ocean is vast, and there are many challenges to such a journey. Ancient ships were not as advanced as modern vessels, and the Phoenicians themselves didn't leave detailed records of such far-flung voyages. Scholars point out that many of the so-called Phoenician inscriptions in the Americas could be misidentifications or cases of mistaken identity. For example, the similarities between Phoenician symbols and Native American glyphs could simply be a case of independent development, rather than evidence of direct contact. Additionally, the artifacts are often found in contexts that raise doubts about their authenticity. So, if the Phoenicians did sail across the Atlantic, why didn't they leave more substantial evidence? Where are the records, the maps, or the detailed accounts of their travels? Now let's entertain the possibility that the Phoenicians did, in fact, reach the Americas. Could they have left behind hidden traces of their journey? Some researchers argue that the Phoenicians were capable of extraordinary feats of navigation, and that they may have had access to knowledge or techniques that we don't fully understand. It's important to note that the Phoenicians were not the only ancient civilization with seafaring skills. The ancient Egyptians, Greeks, and even the Polynesians are believed to have made long-distance voyages. But the Phoenicians were particularly adept at sailing in open waters, navigating vast expanses of ocean and building ships that could withstand long journeys. Some have even suggested that the Phoenicians might have sailed to the Americas not for exploration, but for trade. They may have been looking for precious metals, rare goods, or new resources to bring back to the Mediterranean. This would explain the presence of artifacts and inscriptions in the Americas. Phoenicians could have set up trade routes with indigenous peoples. So, did the Phoenicians reach the Americas? The evidence is far from conclusive, but the theories surrounding their possible transatlantic voyages are compelling. Whether they made it across the ocean or not, one thing is clear. The Phoenicians were exceptional navigators, and their maritime skills may have taken them much farther than we've traditionally believed. As more research is done and new discoveries are made, we may one day unlock the truth about the Phoenicians' journeys. Until then, the question remains: could these ancient seafarers have crossed the Atlantic long before Columbus? The mystery is far from solved, and it's one that continues to spark debate among historians, archaeologists, and explorers alike. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the past. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future explorations of ancient mysteries. Until next time, keep questioning history. Take care.